What's up, everybody? I am your host, a mysterious hotel owner who runs a satanic cult on the side, and that is my co-host, an asshole business owner who gets his employees dragged to hell. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate, where we offer you the first of 5 extra spooky and a little bit of kooky Halloween specials. We have finally arrived at our Halloween season here at the Grindhouse Syndicate.
It's about fucking time.
Yeah.
Favorite episodes of the year.
Yep, always good. If this is your first Halloween season with us, I will break it down for you real quick. So during the whole month of Scaretober, every movie we cover here will take place on or around Halloween. Now, Halloween doesn't have to be in the plot, but it does have to take place during this season. And we got a pretty solid lineup this year, I think, which we'll be posting soon. That way, if you prefer to watch the movie before the episode, you'll be able to do that. I know a lot of people watch a lot of horror all October. So if you want to slip in one of the movies that we're covering that week coming up, you'll be able to do that. Also, I'm not going to say what it is yet, but we're also going to be doing hands down like our most requested movie ever this month. So get excited for that and feel free to guess what it is.
So outside of that one, obviously you're not going to announce yet, which I'd be very interested if somebody could guess that. Are you going to announce any of the other ones?
No, I think I'm just going to post them probably this up and coming week.
You're still not sure? Still trying to put your finger on your final pick?
I think they're locked in, but we kind of need to play around with the order and see what works and when things come out. But as soon as we get that in order, I'm going to go ahead and, make a thing for them, post them on the social medias and the website and stuff. That way people know what's going on and when it's going on.
Well, we got 5 total this year.
Yep, 5.
So we got 5 last year, so this has worked out really well. So we got 2 picks apiece, and then this big one that's been pretty requested. So
yeah, the fans kind of picked this one because they keep requesting it, and we were like, you know what, we can actually tie this in to the Halloween. Now, I will say there's at least 3 listeners that know what this movie is. They're kind of more of the constant listeners or commenters or, people that we've grown to know over the years. And some of them have written about this movie. And I'm like, well, don't worry, because we're going to be covering this movie at this time. But I remember who the 3 are. So if they guess, I'm going to be like, yeah, you already know.
yeah.
So as the title says, we're kicking off this year's October fun with a fantastic Halloween found footage film, Stephen Cognetti's House LLC from 2015. So I gotta ask, what caused you to bring House to the table this year? Because I feel like we haven't really talked a lot about these movies over the past few years. So I'm really interested of what spurred this pick for you.
Alright, so I initially seen this movie fucking years and years ago, back when, I don't remember if they were initially on Netflix or they were always on Amazon, but I think then when I first seen it, I think there was 2, and then I remember catching the 3rd one. Me and Brooke binge watched them, I think maybe when the 3rd one came out. I remember having, like, a pretty decent opinion on the first one, but we binge watched them all together, so I kinda always blended them all together in my head, and then, it wasn't last year, the year before, the 4th one came out, which was Origin, and that movie was fucking fantastic.
Yes,
I
it
remember
was.
it being it was in my top 5 movies for the year. I remember loving it. There was some really, really creepy scenes that were done really well. That's what stuck out the most. And because of that movie being so good, and I remember having a pretty positive attitude on at least the first one, I bought Umbrella's box set with all 4 of them, their limited edition box set that they came out with a couple years ago, and just recently, like a month ago, we're rewatching them for Halloween. At the beginning of September, we're like, "Okay, start our Halloween movies," and I watched the first one, and I was like, "Holy shit, I forgot how fucking awesome this movie is." I forgot that the creepy ass clown is a staple from the very beginning of the franchise. When I watched 4, it had been so long, and like I said, I kind of, blended all of them together. So, yeah, I wanted to bring it to the fucking table because I forgot how great this movie is.
Well, I had seen the first one a few times. I enjoyed it, but I never like really got into the Hell Houses. I think we've talked about this on the show or on the Patreon show, but this week I watched it for this episode and I immediately got sucked into all of them. I watched them all besides the new one this week. Just went through and just ran through all 4 of them, and I really grew an appreciation for them that I didn't have before. I think what makes me really enjoy these movies is the continuation and continuity of the films and the story. The story is also surprisingly pretty tight throughout the franchise. They also do a ton of callbacks, which I'm a sucker for. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you will get me on callbacks or going back to, like, scenes from a first film and having, like, actors from one film be in the next film or 2 films down. Yeah, I'm a sucker for that. So, but yeah, the story, like I said, the story is also really tight because they really stick to the same events, the same things. They do introduce new additions, like add-ons to the story as we go through, but it doesn't drastically shift the story in different directions, or it doesn't seem, how like, I love Friday the 13th, but the story gets kind of wild and it cancels out other stuff from previous movies. This doesn't do that.
Yeah.
It's real tight.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't know that you would just binge watch them.
I'll watch them all.
Yeah, so I don't think any of them are bad movies. I remember the 4th one being like, "Holy shit, that was really good," and then when I went back and watched the first, I was, completely sucked in. I was like, "Holy shit, I remember this being good, but I don't remember liking it this much." And then the second one was, they I thought geniusly picked up right where the first one left off, and the second one's kind of the same story, but what the fuck happened to the documentary people from the first? And
Yeah,
the 3rd one does kinda go off on it's a good continuation, but I will say the 3rd is probably, out of all of them, my least favorite. But another reason I wanted to bring this to the table this year was the 5th and final one is out in theaters. I doubt it's still playing in theaters, but it came out last month, I think, and, I have not seen it yet. It is the only one that is not found footage, but I've not seen it yet, and it's hitting Shudder at the end of
it's
October.
October 30th.
Yep,
Yep.
so I really wanted to get a refresh this year on all of them before that one comes out, and then, this one just hit so hard, I was like, "I gotta get this shit in there." So, that's how it became my one of my picks.
Yeah, so with that being said, are you ready to dive into Hell House LLC?
I have been ready since, like, 2 weeks ago.
All right, let's do it.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at grindhousehorrorpod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at grindhousesyndicate.horror.pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say, the morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts and new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
And if you really love us and don't want us to get sucked into the hell dimension on opening night, give us a review. House LLC is a 2015 American found footage supernatural horror film written and directed by Stephen Cognetti. It stars Ryan Jennifer Jones, Danny Bonelli, and Gore Abrams, and is the first installment in the House LLC franchise. It had a very minor release on October 16th of 2015 with a budget of about $25,000 and reportedly generated significant revenue in the 8 figures from streaming and rentals. It doesn't really have a box office because it was mainly released via VOD on Amazon, Shudder, YouTube, Vudu, and iTunes. The release it had on October 16th was like festivals. So not really a box office here, but it made at least 8 figures off of $25K.
Yeah, and imagine with the franchise it spawned and Stephen Cognetti holding on to the rights and continuing to do them. Imagine how much money that has returned him.
Oh,
that
yeah.
initial $25,000.
I can't wrap my brain around how they only did this for $25,000. Like,
Yeah,
this is at least like, I would say it's at least like $100,000 movie.
yeah, especially with the whole haunted house and production value side of it. That is a really low number. I actually, when you said that, I wanted to kind of account for like depreciation of the dollar and go back and see what that $25,000 would have been in today's money in 1999 when the Blair Witch was made, and because I know it was less, and see like what like a just
A comparison.
like a comparison. The Blair
Yeah.
Witch being a found footage movie, that's kind of like a staple thing to compare it to, a movie that was made very cheap. Because man, I wonder what $25,000 in today's money was in 1999. Compared to, I think the Blair Witch was made on like $50,000.
Yeah, I don't know, but man, $25K is like, what, did everyone work for free?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even see how you can do this for that. So the film is shot in a documentary style mixed with found footage where we follow a group of Halloween haunted house creators as they prepare for the 2009 opening of their popular haunted attraction, Hell House. Tragedy strikes on opening night when an unknown malfunction causes the death of 15 tour-goers and staff. The film reveals the lead-up to the tragedy and what really went wrong that night, the details of which have remained a mystery to the public since the tragedy. So, one day, while driving through New York, Stephen Cognetti passed by the Josephine Hudson House located in the Rockland Lake area. Now, this house had been abandoned for quite some time, and needless to say, looked very creepy. And this is where the idea for this film hit him. Wouldn't it be cool if a group of people set up a Halloween haunt in a real haunted house and shit goes seriously wrong? Now, if you would like to see this house, which I recommend, a YouTube channel called J&M Explorations has a little video on it, and they actually walk up to it and give it a quick little tour. I tried to find some other videos on it, and I couldn't. It wasn't a whole lot on this house, but it is definitely like a creepy-ass house. So I can see how this idea came to him after seeing this thing. So he writes the script in 2012, and casting began in 2014, and then he began the search for the haunted house that would become the set of this movie. And after visiting many abandoned houses, he decided that he wanted to shoot inside a real haunted house attraction, which is where he met a lady named Angie Moyer, who owned the Waldorf Estate of Fear located in Pennsylvania. Cognetti thought that this was a perfect setting and locked in a deal where he even hired Angie as the film's set designer. So I'm sure you all are wondering if this place is still open. And it is. You can 100% visit this place on Halloween. It looks pretty much like exactly like it does in the movie. It's got the haunted hotel. It has an escape room now, and it has a hayride.
Yeah, so that explains kind of production value-wise how
It's already set up.
because you gotta think, like, just setting up a haunted house alone costs fucking $25,000, like, so to that makes a lot of sense on production value, how they were able to pull this off.
Very smart move. Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried to look it up. It's really hard to find a deflation calculator to look back at what that would have been, but it does say $25,000 in 1999 is worth about 48 today. So
Pretty close.
adjusting $25,000 today would have been worth around like $13,000 in 1999.
Wow.
So that's how little
Yeah.
money that this movie was truly made on. That's crazy.
Yeah. When I found out that this place is still open and looks the same, man, was like, I want to go there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You can go and you can look at YouTube videos or pictures of this place, and it's wild, man. I even looked at like the comments on YouTube videos, and people were talking about how awesome it was to go through this place after watching the movies.
Yeah, imagine what the movies has done for this place. Like,
Oh, skyrocketed
imagine,
it.
yeah, the idea of letting them film there, what it's done for that business.
Oh yeah, 100%. So after filming wrapped in Pennsylvania in May, the production then moved to New York City, where most of the interviews were filmed, and by mid-June, filming was complete and the movie went to post-production, where it would be edited for the next 5 months before the first private screening would be seen at the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. After that, the film was shown at a few horror film festivals, where it won the Best Paranormal Film Award. The worldwide distribution rights for Hell House were then acquired by Terror Films, with a North American VOD release date of November 1st, 2016, where it received pretty favorable reviews from most, including Rotten Tomatoes, Dread Central, and Slash Film. Since then, it has become a Halloween must-watch and even became a full-blown franchise, spawning many sequels that continue the story, including House LLC 2, The Abaddon Hotel in 2018, Lake of Fire in 2019, Origins, The Carmichael Manor in 2023, and supposedly the final film, House LLC Lineage, which just came out.
Yeah, super stoked to see that.
So, ratings. Rotten Tom, 73%. A lot higher than I thought it was going to get.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they don't typically rate found footage very well, so this is a big surprise.
Yeah, I guess the independent bump and
This is super independent, so
yeah, it overpowered the found footage dump.
yeah. IMDb gave it a 6.4 out of 10, Letterboxd a 3.1 out of 5, and the Google average audience rating is kind of a disappointing 3.7 out of 5.
Yeah, that's kind
I
of
think it's a
crazy.
little higher than that.
Well, I think a lot of people aren't big found footage fans.
Yeah, that's true.
One thing this movie does incredibly well is the haunted house thing that like movies like, and I know you're a big fan of this movie, like a movie like Hellfest,
Yes.
but they do the haunted houses so like bigger than what they actually are.
Oh, yeah,
So-
it's like $100,000 haunted house, and
Yeah.
there's like 6 of them.
yeah. So I mean they do it better than like Halloween Horror Nights
Yeah.
in movies normally. So I did think that that thought came to my head of them filming it in an actual fucking haunted house. Like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kill it with the haunted house feel.
If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming for free on Tubi, Pluto TV, the Roku channel, Plex, AMC Plus, Shudder, and for rent on Google Play and Fandango for $1 $19.99. This movie is everywhere right now. You can totally watch it for free, not pay a single thing for it, or, you have AMC or Shudder. They have a deal where when they come out, they always go to Shudder. It's kind of been a thing since the beginning. So if you got Shudder, you can watch them all.
Or if you wanna see the director's cut, I'm sure you can get it elsewhere, but you could, I will say, like, after rewatching these, I'm super stoked that I bought that fucking limited edition Umbrella box set, which there probably is still some because it's not a massive movie. But, yeah, it's got director's cuts for all of them. It's got movie posters for every single movie, tons of, like, behind the scenes, a fucking whole book they send with it. So, if you're into these, I would definitely check that out or hold out and see if Umbrella is gonna do something for the 5th one.
All right, so are you ready to dive into the plot of House LLC?
I am ready.
All right, so we start out with a black screen that says, "What you are about to see is a documentary on the mysterious events surrounding the 2009 Halloween haunted house tour tragedy." It's a mouthful. We then cut to some footage of a woman walking around the outside of an abandoned hotel, and as she does this, we then hear the woman's voiceover ask someone, "In your opinion, what happened that night at the Abaddon Hotel?" We then cut to an interview with a man named Martin Cliver, who is a local journalist, and he responds with a flat out, "I don't know." After that, we then jump to some local news footage outside the hotel that shows a bunch of ambulances and fire trucks as the reporter chimes in and says, "Breaking news, tragedy at a Halloween haunted house in Abaddon. From what we are learning, the opening night of this haunted house tour ended in disaster, but police aren't answering any of our questions." A small abandoned hotel was transferred into a haunted attraction. It was due to run tours for the next few weeks through Halloween. We then get another black screen with creepy piano music that says, "On October 8th, 2009, a Halloween haunted house opened its doors in Abaddon, New York, a small town just outside New York City in Rockland County." We then get a little bit more of the news coverage that shows some quick interviews with some of the surviving members who claim to still not be entirely sure what exactly happened inside. Also, it appears that none of the attraction's workers made it out alive. The beginning of this is a lot of cuts. So be prepared for the next few minutes. We're going to be cutting through a lot of different stuff about a lot of different information.
I do love, though, that they give us, like, the newscast footage of this tragedy that happened and then kinda tie that in with the documentary on
Yeah.
people speculating what happened, and it literally just fucking, like, grabs and pulls you in from the start and kinda sets the stage of what this whole movie is, which is what the fuck happened on this night.
Well, another thing is it kind of has a realistic aspect to it because when tragedies happen in real life, this is how we get the information. First, you kind of have this announcement that this tragedy happened, you see scenes from it, and then there's kind of a lack of information for a little while, and then eventually, as time goes on, you start getting more and more information, and then typically down the road, if it's a big enough tragedy, there'll be some kind of documentary series or something that's where you really get the details of what happened, which is what we're seeing here.
Yeah, yeah, like, years later when
Yeah.
they put together, like, they'll have, like, a Netflix documentary or some more high budget. So Stephen Cognetti said the first iteration that he wrote for this because he had wanted to do a haunted house movie, like, I know you mentioned that was kind of the basis. He wanted to do a haunted house movie, and the first iteration that he wrote for this, which was not initially found footage, he fucking hated it. He thought it was awful. He's like, "Oh, I gotta rewrite this." And he watched Lake Mungo, which is their kind of mockumentary that they do. And
It's one of my favorite found footage movies,
yeah,
actually.
he said that that really inspired him to, like, he really liked the unsolved mysteries and these type of documentaries, and he kind of wanted to Lake Mungo and like, Unsolved Mysteries and stuff. That's what kinda sparked the idea to rewrite the script into this documentary style, and I thought it turned out great.
Yeah. So, after this bit of information, we then cut to a video made by a couple standing in line next to go into the attraction, where we can see the fun and excitement just as they head into the entrance and begin to walk through the scary maze like interior. And what's cool here is I think most of us can relate to this scene because we all know what it's like to stand in line at like one of these haunted houses and you finally get inside and you begin to like walk through. I think they did a very good job capturing this moment that most of us are familiar with. So, as they walk through, we start to see many familiar things that a typical haunted house has, including creepy sound effects, smoke machines, laser lights, and of course, fake mutilated dead bodies. After about halfway through, they suddenly see a young woman dressed in a Hell House t shirt run past them in the opposite direction, quickly opening a side door, revealing a bit of behind the scenes looks and heading up a flight of stairs. And this definitely seems weird. You don't typically see one of the workers like run past you and, break the illusion of the show, I guess. And even though this doesn't seem like too big of a deal, we will actually come back to this scene later on. So the couple quickly just chalks this up to some kind of technical issue and continues through the house. But right as they turn the corner to head down to the basement, they come to a complete stop as they notice a big crowd of people just standing there blocking the doorway. We then start to hear screams coming from down below as the crowd suddenly turns around and begins pushing their way back in the opposite direction. And it is at this point where the chaos erupts as everyone begins to panic and wildly run through the hotel looking for an exit. After this YouTube video ends, we then hear a 911 call from a young woman inside where she begs the operator to please send the police. The 911 operator then asks what is going on, and the woman says that she doesn't know exactly, but something is pulling people into the wall. We then hear a loud growl when suddenly the call is disconnected.
So with this opening scene, with them all like scrambling, you see the clown run past too, which is like a cast member, and they're all like, "Is this supposed to be happening?" And they continue through, and then obviously chaos erupts. People are pushing past each other, and they finally get outside, and there's like ambulance, 911 starting to show up. And my first thought was, "Damn." This reminds me a lot, especially when they get outside of the station nightclub fire.
I was fucking literally gonna say that as soon as you finished.
Yeah, so,
Yep.
I put that in my notes whenever I was
Wow.
covering this, and then I was reading through the book right before we recorded on an interview with Stephen Cognetti, and he said when he was rewriting after watching Lake Mungo and deciding on the documentary style he was gonna go with, that he had seen this YouTube video of the station nightclub fire.
Yep.
And for those that don't know, this fire happened when the band Great White was playing at a place in New Jersey. The pyrotechnics caused a fire, and a bunch of people got trapped inside. 100 people died. People trying to get out the door. It was like chaos. And he seen that, and it had such an effect on him that that's what inspired the intro, the whole, like, beginning one cut, because the footage from the station nightclub fire was a guy who worked for the news company, and he literally never stops this one cut, and that is the inspiration behind the beginning. Like, that stuck with him so much when he was rewriting the script, he put this scene in there specifically because that had such an effect on him.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when I watched the movie at the beginning of the week of like, this is dead on that footage. And the thing that it really does it is all the people trying to get out of one area. And what happened in the real life situation is a lot of people ended up getting trampled to death, which you somewhat see in this, at least this little hallway, this stairwell to the basement is something similar. But yeah, the pandemonium and chaos is dead on that nightclub fire.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was really, really cool, you know, putting that in my notes and then and finding out that that was actually like something he had seen that stuck with him so much. It inspired this scene.
Yep, in my notes as well. So that's really cool. We then jump to another news story the day after the tragedy that informs us that the official story from police is that a severe malfunction caused the deaths, but refused to say what this malfunction was. So at this point, the police are keeping the story heavily under wraps, with the public only able to rely on the YouTube video and the 911 call to piece together what exactly happened. Until a few months later, the journalist Martin Cliver breaks into the hotel, takes some photographs, and releases them to the public, which paint a very grim story. And in one of these pictures is something very interesting, which is a shot of the floor in the hallway, which shows a fairly large streak of blood where someone had obviously been dragged, but they were dragged into the wall, which makes absolutely no sense. After looking at some of the photos, we then get another black screen that says Sarah Havel, a member of Hell House, reached out to documentarian Diane Graves, who is the woman we saw at the very beginning, and she agreed to do an interview at the hotel near Abaddon. She has not been heard from since the tragedy. So this is kind of our setup for the rest of the movie, where we're going to see Sarah explaining the whole story with large chunks of House LLC's personal footage spliced in between, which as soon as the interview begins, we see Sarah hand over this bag of footage from the very beginning of this whole venture by House. So before we dive into this, I want to give a little bit of background info and context. So House LLC is a company founded in New York City by a group of friends in 2002, and its primary business model was to create, build, and run Halloween haunted house attractions, which they became very successful at. The de facto leader of this group was Alex, who held the title of CEO of the company, with his longtime girlfriend Sarah also working for Hell House. The second in command was Mac, who is definitely kind of like one of those like macho, I'm not really scared of anything, I don't really believe in anything kind of guys. Then we have the technical advisor, Tony, who is kind of the sensible, nice guy of the group, which we learn later on. He's more of Mac's friend and not like so much a really good friend of Alex, because Alex is definitely like the asshole of the group. And finally, we have Paul, who is the main cameraman filming everything, who is also one of those guys who likes to joke around a lot, and he doesn't really take a lot of stuff seriously. But yeah, these are our main characters and all of the people who make up the House LLC. And we find out that after years of success in New York City, Alex has suddenly decided to bring everybody down to Abaddon to build and run this new attraction that he claims is going to make them a lot of money. Now, considering this place has been abandoned for a long time, they have to head down a little early and fix this place up and make it a haunted house, which is where our story begins. So Diane immediately starts out the interview by asking Sarah where she has been all this time, where she responds that she has been staying with family mostly. Diane then asks her how she's been coping with the tragedy, and she looks down for a moment and says that she's in a better place now, which, if you've seen this movie, then you already know. I'll just leave it at that. By the way, if you haven't seen this movie, watch this movie before you listen to this episode, because there is a twist in here that I don't want to ruin for you. So Diane then starts talking about how the police have kept everything hidden since that night, which has erupted a storm of conspiracy theories, and asks Sarah if she can tell them what went on that night. And this is where Sarah hands over all the footage that we are about to see. We then get another black screen that says, Hell House footage, August 23rd through October 8th, 2009, which tells us that this crew lived and worked in this abandoned hotel for about a month and a half total, which is a lot longer than I really realized the first time I watched it.
Well, yeah, it does seem like it's about a month, but she does mention that it took like a week or two for them to get the electricity on, and that's when they really started staying overnight there, and that's kind of where the bulk of our footage begins.
So, as the footage starts, we see the gang in the car on the way to the hotel, and we immediately pick up on some friction between Alex and Mac. We even get a scene where they pull over and argue, but we aren't told what the cause of this friction is until much later. So, once they finally arrive at the hotel, feelings seem to be mixed on the idea, especially considering the place has been closed for a very long time, still has all the old furniture and stuff inside, and the building hasn't had electricity in decades. Some members of the group try to ask Alex some of the details about the place, but he quickly blows this off, claiming he doesn't really know anything and changes the subject, which we will, of course, find out why later on. Basically, what we see here is everybody but Alex is standing around looking at this place thinking, what the fuck? Like, this is such a bad idea, but Alex is being overly positive, which would be extremely suspicious to me.
Well, I will say I kind of disagree, and the reason being so in their conversations we learned that Hell House has taken place at a bunch of different places in different parts of New York City. Like every couple years or so, they'll change locations. I assume there's some background, there's probably certain years they had to go certain places because of for financial reasons, whatever. But his reason is he wants to keep it fresh, and this is gonna make it bigger than ever. Why I think that this is a good idea is they do mention that it's only 40 minutes outside of the city, and this place has a history especially amongst this town, but it has a paranormal history. Like, even before they go there, this place is known for kinda being haunted and being this really creepy, like, cursed place. So if you could take your haunted house there, a place that already is supposedly haunted in real life, and there's all these, like, theories and conspiracies about, is this place past? And you can do a successful haunted house there, that would be fucking awesome.
I will agree with you, except for the fact that Alex is purposely not telling them the history. You would think if he really wanted them to be excited, he would have put it the way you just put it. But he's like, there's nothing like wrong with this place. There's like no history. I don't really know. And he is trying to convince them that turning this shithole right now and cleaning this place up some is a good idea without all of that important stuff that you just said, which is why I say it's kind of a red flag to me. Like, what's the hook here?
I think they know that there's a history. I just don't think they know, like, the details. I think they know, like, it's, like, a known kind of paranormal place or these tragedies happened at this hotel, but they don't know, like, as far as, like, the details and how deep it goes, and it is pretty clear from a viewer's point that he is trying to keep some of that from them. But, that could be explained away, and maybe he just doesn't wanna freak them out. Maybe like Sarah, his girlfriend, he doesn't wanna freak her out. But we know as the viewers later on why he keeps a lot of it.
So, after exploring this trashed hotel, they end up heading down to the basement where they find some truly unsettling shit, which is a big ass pentagram painted on the wall with restraints attached to the ceiling and a bunch of old books and Bibles on the floor. And despite Alex's overly enthusiastic attitude about this find, some of the others are definitely creeped out, especially considering Alex told them that they were going to be living in this place for a while. Question for you, would you be on board with sleeping here?
Yeah. Yeah, if I worked for this haunted house company and At this point, they've been doing this for, over 10 years together. Yeah, I would, like, staying there while they fix it up for a month. Yeah.
Yeah, me, fuck no. No, nope, nope. I would be totally cool with working there, fixing it up, but I'm not staying the night there. This is an abandoned place in a city, a town that we know nothing about. For all I know, there could be, people breaking in there to do drugs or whatever, trying to sleep in there. I would not be staying the night in this place.
Well, although Alex is the owner, it's pretty clear that the other friends that are with him have been with him for a long time, and they probably make a good bit of money. Like, this is probably like a big chunk of money during the September and October season, or October in this sense. I think it opens like October 9th, but they have a financial stake in this as well.
So we then quickly cut back to the interview where Diane asks Sarah what it was like to stay there, and she informs us that it took Paul and Tony about a week to get electricity running in the building, which is when they begin staying the night. She also says that they didn't really experience anything weird until they fully moved in. So the footage then skips ahead that week where we see the gang spending their first night inside, and it seems like at this point attitudes have calmed back down and everyone is having a good time and getting along very well. I do want to point out when they first see the basement, they talk about how they have been in worse situations, most notably their haunted house in Queens, which quickly gets interrupted by Mac, who says, "I thought we agreed to never talk about Queens." Well, during this bar scene, they actually talk a little bit about Queens, and apparently the theme was Lucifer's Cabin, which they got a lot of bad reviews on. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, when I think about Lucifer, I don't really ever picture a cabin. Like, I don't know how they thought that was going to work. Like, those are two things that don't really go together.
They were also mentioned, that they had, like, their door guy,
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
their
yeah.
actors was a fucking, like, typical Queens, like, asshole
Yeah.
guy who was, like, a douche to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
But one thing I will point out about this scene is the main 5, their chemistry is really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely is. So, after they reminisce about some of their old haunts and good memories, Alex attempts to kind of give a toast and once again get everyone excited for this. But we immediately see that despite the way everybody is acting, most of them still are on the fence about this idea and are pretty worried that they're going to lose a ton of money on this, which is a very good point, I think. Um, Considering that they've been really successful in New York City, kind of doing this thing completely different, and they really didn't give themselves a whole lot of time to work on the house. I could see this being kind of, financially worrisome.
Well, yeah, like I said, I disagree. I think that this could be a really cool thing, had everything worked out, especially if you want to keep things fresh. When you're doing something like Lucifer's Cabin, which is a stupid idea, but a lot of like haunted house ideas and stuff are going to be really hard to pull off in New York City. Whereas this gives them a different landscape. It does give them this creepy old fucking house that just from the outside just gives a better feel.
So after that, we then jump to Tony finally setting up the surveillance system in the whole house when Alex then notices there is no cameras in the basement, which is where the guest will walk down and exit the hotel while a female actor is chained up begging for help in front of this pentagram. But Tony informs him that because of the thick stone walls, they not only can't get any signal for cameras, but are also having trouble getting the walkies to work down there. So his solution is to hire a big dude to sit down there in case any issues pop up with the guests or actors. So kind of like putting like a bouncer down there. So one thing that I am really surprised about is like in this scene right after this, and a couple of other spots in the movie, Tony is making some kind of prop when Paul says that it looks like shit. And Tony responds with Alex that Alex didn't want to pay to move any of their props down from New York, so they have to make everything here. And what I'm surprised about is how nobody really questions this. Like, they're this successful haunt company that they do this every year. They have accumulated all this great stuff for these houses, and Alex didn't want to pay to bring anything.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag.
Like, to me, yeah, red flag,
Especially
there's money issues.
especially 40 minutes away. Like, this is the equivalent of, if there was a successful haunted house downtown Charleston that moved different locations, but was always downtown Charleston. And then one year they got big, they were successful, they were known over the last couple years. And this year we found out that they were moving to this notoriously creepy haunted house in Somerville. We would be like, "Oh, that's gonna be awesome." Like, this is already, like, a super creepy haunted house. So, people in New York City would know about Abaddon. It's only 40 minutes away. So, I think it's a great idea, but huge red flag there when it's only 40 minutes. Like, that's like I said, Somerville, for us, that's not that far of a drive to move years of this equipment that you've accumulated.
Yeah, I mean, all they would have to do is, like, rent a trailer and bring it, but obviously the financial situation is so rough that that's not plausible, and you would think that he would try to make that work because they would get the haunt set up way faster if they didn't have to make all these props. So yeah, red flag to me. So next we cut to Paul laying in bed talking to his camera, and he informs us that they have been working on this place for 3 weeks now. And as he begins talking about how he feels about it so far, we suddenly see the silhouette of a disheveled woman quietly walk into his room, which he has no idea about, which looks super creepy because they have like this blood red light in the hallway and his door is open. So it just makes the scene like even better.
Yeah. This would creep me the fuck out. I'll
Yeah.
just put it like that.
So while he is talking, this lady walks up and stops like 7 feet behind him and just stands there perfectly still. Paul then hears the floor creak, causing him to quickly turn around where he spots the woman, but he doesn't freak out all that much because he immediately assumes that it's just Sarah. Once the lady is spotted, she slowly turns around and walks back towards the hallway as Paul calls out to her. After getting no response back, he just chalks this up to her sleepwalking, and after she exits the room and turns the corner, he looks back at the camera and says, "That was weird," and goes to bed. So the next day, the actors they hired have shown up to meet the crew and get some info on their characters, and Paul immediately becomes interested in a girl named Melissa who will be playing the girl chained up in the basement. And right in the middle of this scene, we quickly cut back to the interview with Martin, who said that he managed to get an off-the-record interview with one of the cops who was the first to arrive at the scene, and he told him that when he first walked into the door, he immediately spotted one of the Hell House employees dead with their throat slashed, which appeared to be self-inflicted. He then starts talking about the case of Joey Scheffler, who was the actor hired to stay down in the basement with Melissa. Now, fortunately, Joey was able to get out of the basement right as things popped off, where he successfully survived the chaos. But in the days after the tragedy, he refused to speak to anyone, including the authorities, about what happened that night in the hotel, and 9 days later, he was found hanging dead in his bedroom.
Yeah, so I'll give them props here. Literally going from the creepy footage of them with the girl coming up behind him, and he blows it off, and then they jump to the first responder saying that one of the first people he came up on was a cast member who he couldn't say who it was, but they literally had slit their own throat. Then immediately jumping into the only surviving cast member, or one of the only surviving, that the only one that they know that survived, killed himself 9 days later. As a viewer, it really sucks you in at this moment. You're like, okay, we already got creepy footage of them when they're setting up, and then we find out a little bit more on the documentary side, on the back end. This is, like, when the movie really sucks you in, and from here on out, like, the pacing is fucking fantastic.
Yeah, it's hard to write because, you can't write everything that happens in a movie. You have to have important parts and then parts that, you can make shorter or skip. They're not drastically important to the plot. This was hard from this point because every single thing is there for a reason and tells part of the story. And I did not expect that when I first watched it. I
Yeah.
thought it was gonna be fairly easy to write, but yeah.
I had a issue with the notes.
Yes.
I would be typing out a note, and then the next scene's a fucking banger, and I'm like, "Fuck, gotta hurry up and type my note," and, a couple times I had to pause just because there's so many, like, iconic or really scary scenes back to back or important information scenes. Yeah, but man, this part sucks you in, and from here on out, like, it's everything is either really scary or super important to the plot.
Yeah, I will agree with you. I do think this was a really slick way to get the audience's wheels turning because the first thing you do is you start immediately trying to figure out which cast member slit his own throat in the doorway.
Yeah.
Okay, there's gotta be a hint or something somewhere. If not, they wouldn't have put that right there. And then they bring these 3 actors in, and they immediately tell you about the weird, crazy death of one of them after the fact. So, a great way, really good way to get the audience pulled in and in your wheels turning.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed when I was doing my rating that I would rarely ever mention in a movie is editing, and I think that the editing is one of the genius parts of this movie, is the timing of the story and how it's laid out.
Editing will make or break a movie like this, for sure. So we then jump to a few days later where we see Paul walk up on Alex and Melissa talking on the couch about her character. And she ends up asking why they are filming everything, to which Alex gives a very generic answer, with Paul jumping in and telling her that he's trying to catch a ghost. Now, this was meant to only be a joke, but Melissa immediately brings up the local rumors about the Abaddon. Alex, who has obviously been trying to keep all this from his team, attempts to shoot this down, but it is too late, and Paul wants to know what the deal is. She then tells him that she doesn't know a whole lot except for that the owner supposedly hung himself in here, and a bunch of weird stuff happened to some of the guests, which forced the place to shut down, and it is supposedly now haunted. After that, we cut back to another interview with a local historian who tells us some of the backstory on the hotel, which began with a man named Andrew Tully, who originally built the place in Abaddon because of the name, which is also the name of the demon who guards the gate to hell. So Tully was the head of a satanic cult that operated in the hotel where guests began going missing. Specifically, a woman and her 11-year-old little girl in the late 80s who was last seen at the Abaddon. When police came to investigate, Tully was able to prove that they checked out and left, which cleared him of any wrongdoing. Unfortunately for him, though, his reputation was already damaged, killing his business where he eventually hanged himself in the dining room, forcing the Abaddon to close down and become abandoned until now. And this is very important because this story becomes the backbone of not just this movie, but the whole entire franchise. So after this little history lesson, we then cut to Tony, Alex, and Paul down in the basement setting up 3 dummies dressed in creepy-ass clown outfits. And the discussion here is, considering the dummies' heads are in a fixed position, meaning they can only face straight ahead, should they use these awesome masks they found on something so simple? They end up agreeing to leave it the way it is already set up, and this at first doesn't really seem important, but will come back later on. This actually comes back in a few of the sequels too. So the next day, we see the guys meeting with the clown actor Joey, where he shows them this cool little trick where he literally can grab his eye with his fingers and kind of pulls it out of the socket a bit.
That's gross.
It's very gross. I hate it. I hate this scene.
That was one of those things where the actor was like, "Oh, look what I can do," and Stephen Cognetti had to be like, "We gotta put that in the movie.
Well,
That's gross."
well, yeah, that's the only reason I actually included it in this is because it was 100% a real trick this dude can actually do. So props to him for creeping me out.
It makes the movie feel so authentic too. Like a couple of friends
Yeah.
hanging out, and they got this cast member that can do this weird thing, and then being like, "Hey, you show them that thing with your eye you
Yeah.
can do." Like it makes everything feel so authentic.
So later that night, Paul is walking through the hotel, checking out all of the mostly completed rooms for the haunt. And this is where it actually starts to take form and look like a real Halloween house, which I love. This feels so familiar and it really puts me into like that October fall mood.
It's definitely Halloween as fuck.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's a fucking haunted house. It's dripping in October haunted house.
Yeah, when I seen this scene, like, as they're going through the haunted house, I mean, it looks like, a lot of haunted houses I have personally walked through, so it kinda gives me that perspective on the movie. So as he's walking through, we find out from Mac that Alex and Sarah went to the city to grab some supplies, leaving only him, Paul, and Tony in the hotel. He then continues through the house, and right when he turns the corner that leads to the basement, he freezes as he notices the dummy in the clown mask is standing perfectly still in the doorway. At first, he assumes someone just set him up like this, so he makes a joke about looking into the basement, but when he turns back around, the clown is now turned looking directly at him, which immediately causes him to jump back. Now remember, these clown dummies can't move their heads, but this one has his head turned looking right at Paul, which causes Paul to realize that this must be Tony wearing the outfit trying to scare him. I do want to say, so originally this clown was supposed to just be this dummy throughout all of filming, but the dummy, they couldn't get it to like stand up right. So the actor who plays Alex and the actor who plays Tony had to switch off wearing this costume.
Huh.
Yeah, so that's typically one of them in the costume.
Well, they do a really good job at standing still.
Yeah.
I'll say that. This clown is iconic in this franchise. This is one of the things in part 4 that really stood out to me was when they find this clown in the, like, junk room or the closet or something, and, man, for super creepy clown mask, that they picked to kinda be the face of the franchise. It's on the posters, and it's very creepy.
Well, it's not till number 4 that we actually find out this is not something Hell House brought or bought or anything. This was already at the Abaddon because
Yeah.
there is a very long history with this outfit. So after this, he kind of laughs this off and he heads back through the house where he turns a corner and spots Tony because he thinks this is Tony fucking with him. And he spots Tony talking to Mac, which totally confuses him. He then takes off running back towards the basement where he eventually finds the dummy now sitting down there looking like it never moved. This is actually like one of my personal favorite parts of the movie is this whole scene because it's shot in one take, one motion, and it's done very well. And it's also really creepy.
It is super creepy, and I would be fucking pissed if I couldn't get my friends to believe me.
Oh, yeah,
and I
yeah.
got that on video.
Yeah.
I would be so stoked when I realized that I had it on video for proof, and then when nobody believed me, I would be legitimately fucking pissed.
So this causes Paul to freak out and start yelling at his two friends when we suddenly cut to later on where they're all gathered around looking at the footage. And needless to say, this totally shocks everybody, with Mac and Alex believing it to just be some kind of prank pulled by Paul and Tony. So a couple of days later, we see Paul and Tony attempting to test out some effects they installed in the house. And how it's going to go is Tony's going to go into the control room while Paul acts as like the guest and he walks through this area of the haunt. Once Paul gives him the go ahead, Tony kills all the lights and turns on the strobes. But pretty much immediately, we start seeing different shit appear as the lights flash, including an all black hooded figure holding a knife and the creepy clown from the basement. This causes Paul to lose his shit and freak out, where he eventually runs into another room and begins puking. For one, the puking part was not in the script. The strobe lights caused the actor to actually throw up. Another thing, I can personally relate to this. For most of my life, I was totally fine with strobe lights, but do you remember when I got like super disoriented and lost in the haunted house like 4 years ago? And you had to like come back and get me?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I don't know what it is now. Strobe lights fuck me up to where I get like super confused. I can't figure out where I'm going. It makes me fucking feel kind of dizzy. Yeah, I'm with him on that.
And that sucks because strobe lights are like a staple in any haunted house that you're ever going to go into. I personally love this scene though. I think it's super creepy how they
Yeah.
set it up. I mean, it's perfectly how the strobe effect is supposed to be creepy anyway, but they play it off so well. Like when he's asking how many dummies do they have, and then when he realizes it's moving towards him and takes off running, like his reaction just feels so genuine. I might throw up if that happened to me too.
Yeah, I mean, that's scary. So, I never noticed it until this watch. But this is the first time I really put it together in my brain of how scary it would be to be, having all these weird paranormal events happen in a fucking haunted house. Like a haunted, like a fun haunted house.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that are already in there that are supposed to be fucking with you and scaring you. And then you add this, and it almost ups the paranoia like times 5, because once the first thing freaks you out, every time you turn a corner, there's something that's going to freak you out. Like
Yeah.
it just ups the heightens those senses so much.
So much more things for ghosts to fuck with you too. Like you have
Yeah.
so many different fucking things that could move and just
Yeah.
be that much more creepy because it's already made to be creepy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like once the real paranormal thing kind of gets you past that point, everything starts freaking you out.
Yeah, and with found footage movies, the beauty in a found footage movie is you put yourself in their place, like
Mhm.
you're seeing it from the viewer's perspective, and this movie does that and captures that beautifully.
So after this event, we see the gang out back discussing the situation where Paul gets pissed and argues that they should shut it down or at least warn everybody of what's been happening. But of course, Alex isn't having it and tells Paul to shut up and keep it to himself unless he wants Hell House to fail. So later that night, Paul is once again woken up by some kind of strange noise, and as he walks out into the hallway, he spots the creepy clown standing perfectly still at the bottom of the steps. Mac also hears this and comes out, where he accuses Paul of trying to fuck with him, but as they are moving the dummy back, Paul spots Sarah standing in the dining room talking to the wall. This would fuck me up. If I came out of my bedroom and seen that fucking clown standing there.
Yep. Yeah, all it would take is the clown at this point, where I would be out of here. Fuck loyalty. At that point, I'm like, okay, I'm freaked out enough where, like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like, you have entire mannequins moving. This is dangerous at this point. But then add in, like, Sarah talking to the wall and everything that happens after that. Nope, that would be the part where I drew the line.
Yeah, I'd punch the shit out of that clown dummy. Just in case it wasn't a dummy. I would waylay that thing. So they attempt to call her name but get no response from her, prompting them to walk up to her and see what's wrong. And as they get closer, they begin to hear her talking, but can't really understand what she is saying. And what makes this even worse is despite them standing right next to her, she isn't even acknowledging that they're there, which would be very concerning.
Yeah.
Once Mac touches her shoulder and says her name, this like yanks her out of this trance and she immediately begins freaking out, screaming and crying, forcing Mac to console her. And right as he finally gets her to calm down a bit, Paul turns around to discover that the fucking clown dummy is now gone.
Yeah,
That'd be it. That'd be fucking in the car down the road.
I think that Sarah has a history of sleepwalking, mainly because before, whenever the creepy thing comes up behind him and he thinks it's Sarah and he's like, are you just sleepwalking again? I don't think he says again, but he blows it off as her sleepwalking. And then this. So you could almost at this point in your brain think, okay, well, one of them set up the clown to fuck with us, and then Sarah's sleepwalking again. Her talking to the wall is super creepy, but you can't explain the clown being like, once you turn
No.
around, this clown is gone. Like, nope, fuck this. I'm not going back upstairs. Fuck the stuff upstairs. I'm leaving.
Well, there's no way, too. Like, one of your buddies is gonna get out of bed, come down the steps, manage to find the clown dummy without like a flashlight because they would have seen a light. There's no light. And then move it quietly without you hearing it in the past 10 seconds?
Yeah.
There's no way. There's
Yeah.
obviously something really fucking weird going on here. Now, this puts all three of them on edge as they slowly start going through the hotel when they suddenly notice that the dining room has been redecorated for a nice candlelight dinner, which is fucking wild. Like, that would be mind-blowing. Like,
Yeah.
how in the hell did someone, like, clean up, remove all our, like, scary dummies, and set up a candlelight dinner? Like, what? Like, that's crazy.
Honestly, I would be so fucking freaked out and alarmed at this point. I would almost skip past that in my brain. I would be on like, we got to get the fuck out of here.
I would maybe consider I might be dreaming. Like, maybe this is not happening. Maybe I am fucking sleeping still. So right as they turn around and go to run into the other direction, they spot the fucking clown standing at the end of the hallway. This has got to be the point where they're like, okay, this is not a prank. Like, there's no way to pull this off.
I would have, honest to God, I would have shot this clown.
That's what I'm saying. I would have beat this clown's ass.
Like, if I was staying in this abandoned place, I would for sure have a gun on me for the very reasons you mentioned in the beginning, like squatters trying to get in the house. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You just bought this property. It's been abandoned. People break in. So the moment this shit started going down, like you mentioned you would have punched this thing. I probably, when I realized that it wasn't one of my friends, I would have thought somebody broke in and was in the costume. I would have shot it.
Yeah. We then get a quick couple of scenes the next day, which shows that Sarah is starting to have a bit of a breakdown and Paul is really agitated with Alex because he refuses to shut the haunt down despite some really scary shit going on in this place. We then cut to that night where Paul is again awoken by a noise. And as he cuts the camera on and his light, we see a dead-looking girl sitting on the floor across from him. This scares the ever-loving shit out of him, causing him to hide under the covers. But it is no use as the scary dead girl gets up and walks over to him where he is attacked moments later. I would straight up black out if I turned my light on and saw some shit like this.
Well, the shot of him waking up to this bitch sitting in the room, like, he doesn't know it at first, and you see it as the viewer, and it's like, you quickly realize it's not Sarah, and there's no other female staying in the house, so you're like, "What the fuck is that?" But when he looks back and then she's looking at him, like, him hiding under the covers and hyperventilating is such an authentic reaction to something so fucking scary, to where you're just hoping that whatever you seen's not real, and he, like, waits a minute and calms down and then peeks again. Yeah, I love this scene. It's one of my favorite scenes of the
Yeah,
movie.
this is an amazing scene. I would probably end up in, like, a fear coma. Like, I would, like, pass out like the women in, like, Gone with the Wind. I'd put my hand on my forehead and just, "Ugh," and just collapse, and I would be out for days.
Yeah,
That's how bad this would fuck
I
me up.
think a fear coma is a good way to put almost what he did, which is, like, a very, like a very little kid thing to do, was just, like, hide under the covers, and you hear him hyperventilating, and he kinda calms himself down a little bit and peeks, and it's just the hope that what you seen wasn't actually there, and that you're gonna peek and it's not gonna be there, and of course it is. Yeah, that's super creepy.
So the next morning, Tony finds Paul's room empty except for his camera and immediately informs the others. But to no surprise to anyone, Mac and Alex believe Paul just took off on his own and they don't really think this is a big deal. Mac fucking sucks here, in my opinion.
I
He
agree.
calls Paul a fuck up. He says that he just abandoned them because he doesn't take anything seriously. And he even admits that he doesn't have Paul's phone number to call him. I'm like, this fucking dude is a friend of yours, or at the bare minimum, he works for you. And you didn't even bother to ever get his phone number? Like,
Yeah,
you suck.
yeah, they fucking suck. I think all of them but, like, the nice guy of the group, what's
Tony,
his name? Tony,
Tony and Sarah, yeah.
yeah, they all suck here except Tony. Like, Tony's even, like, he left for 3 days, like, years ago. I think it was, like, 3 or 5 years ago, and you're gonna hold that against him? Like, he even mentions, like, he personally set up, like, a bunch of the lighting and stuff in here and cameras, and you're gonna call him a fuck up who doesn't give a fuck about anything? Like, the guy's clearly been on his shit and been there and been reliable for, 10 plus years minus 3 days that he left, and you're gonna, like, call him a fuck up and hold it against him? Yeah, I think they both suck in this
Well,
instance.
he even makes jokes like a few times after this where like, "Oh, well, like it's hard to even notice Paul's gone because he doesn't do anything when he's here." And it's like, well, that's weird because we see all his camera footage and he's kind of like always doing something.
Yeah.
And it seems kind of like you're not doing like a ton, but yeah, I fucking dislike Mac big time.
Yeah, Andrew or Mac is his nickname. He's a fucking dick
Yeah.
in this scene.
So we then cut to later that night where Mac, Tony, and Alex are all awoken by the piano being played downstairs. And Mac, right off the bat, blames a still missing Paul, who he says is just playing a trick on everybody. After heading downstairs, they find nobody at the piano, despite it playing just mere seconds before they turn the corner, which prompts them to look through the rest of the hotel, where they eventually end up in the basement, where they quickly find a catatonic Paul just sitting against the wall looking possessed as fuck.
Now, people who pay close attention will realize that the piano, which is the creepy main score of the franchise, well, what it turns into, is the same little piano riff that Paul plays when they first walk in the Abaddon Hotel.
Yeah,
When he first sits down, Paul actually comes up with that creepy piano riff. So when they wake up and that's playing downstairs, that's kind of the movie telling you that this place has Paul.
yeah,
Like Paul is even though they find him and he's in like this catatonic state, like they have him. Like he's gone.
yep. So the next day, we see Max out. Max. God damn it. So the next day, we see Mac, Alex, and Tony talking about the situation where Tony demands that they shut it down. But once again, Alex says fuck no and tells Tony that he is just letting the house scare him. Mac then jumps in, totally taking Alex's side, which pushes Tony over the edge, forcing him to storm off, announcing that he quits. Alex doesn't really seem to care because he's like a selfish piece of shit, but Mac chases after him, trying to calm the situation down. They end up outside where Mac tells Tony that there is something really important he has to tell him first, which he agrees to hear him out. But unfortunately, Mac cuts the camera off while this discussion takes place. So, what he tells Tony here, we actually don't see it. I can't remember if we don't see it in this movie or we don't see it to like the like credit scene of this movie, but what he tells Tony here is that Alex invested all of House LLC's money into something that ultimately failed, causing the company to go broke. And if they can't make this haunt successful, not only will Hell House go out of business, but none of them will be paid for all their work. And this is what Mac and Alex were arguing about at the beginning of the movie. So, really important piece that explains a lot about Alex's behavior in the first half of the film, and really is kind of how, and we actually see this scene where it originated, not this scene, but this subject where it started, I believe in the second one.
Man, if I was Tony, I would be really fucking pissed at Mac for knowing this and not telling me or not letting me know. Like, there's a chance that we may not get paid, and Tony kind of is like, okay, yeah, I'll stay. Like, we have to stay, so I can get paid. I've been working for like a month and a half here, 2 months. Like, I got to do it because I got to make this money. But I would have the opposite reaction. I would be like, dude, you fucking knew that there's a chance that I might work for 2 months and not get fucking paid, and you didn't tell me? Like, that's fucked up.
There is another really interesting thing that I actually didn't catch until I began writing this episode. So, every other time I've seen it, including when I watched it at the beginning of the week, there in this scene, Mac, when he tells Tony, he says, you know what the scariest part is. And in the captions, it says, why he's not telling me. But I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, he obviously told you, right? And I listened to it like 4 more times, and I think the caption is wrong because what it actually sounds like he's saying is, what else he isn't telling me.
Yeah. I didn't watch it with the captions, and I heard what else is he not telling me.
I believe the captions are wrong, and I think that this is to tell us that Mac knows that Alex is hiding this like crazy satanic cult history stuff about this place.
Yeah, I don't think he knows that it's like crazy satanic cult stuff, but I think he knows that there's more to why he invested that money that he's not being told.
Yeah, and we also find out in the other one that I believe the second one, that this is not the first time Alex has been to the Abaddon.
Yeah, it's the second. This is the second one that they go a lot deeper into him investing the money, and that he has had a history here before.
So yeah, but this is here to tell us that Mac is suspicious about what could be what the rest of the story is. So after hearing this news, Tony realizes that he can't take the financial loss, and he agrees to stay and continue to work on the attraction despite his dislikes for Alex, because Alex fucking sucks. So after all of this, we then cut to opening night, where we see Alex attempting to rally the actors, but it immediately becomes obvious that he's got some serious stuff on his mind, which leads to a very lackluster speech that kind of confuses everyone and forces Mac to eventually take the lead. While everyone is getting ready, we see Tony head upstairs to check on Paul, who is laying in bed and still not talking to anyone. We then see Tony head out to the second story porch where he films the long line of excited people waiting for the doors to officially open. Mac then heads down to the basement where we see an excited but nervous Melissa chained to the ceiling in front of the pentagram and Joey across from her dressed as a scary clown. And right as he goes to head upstairs, he checks one more time to make sure that Joey still has the keys to Melissa's restraints. I don't know why the fuck they used real locks on her. Like, you could totally make it look like she's chained up without actually chaining her up.
Yeah, I don't think any actual haunted houses really ever, like, actually chain the people up.
This
Like,
is super dangerous.
she could have literally just wore bracelets that were ropes and just held her arms together over that thing. So, it just looked like her wrists were tied, but they weren't actually tied, they were just bracelets. Nobody's gonna ever look that close at her arms in the rafters above her. Uh, yeah. Yeah, super dangerous, like, if there was a fire or
Yeah, it
something,
was a fire. She couldn't get out.
yeah,
Joey had a fucking heart attack during a fire and then, like,
and he could.
yeah,
He
big
looks like
boy.
he is the body type to possibly have an early heart attack. Yeah, terrible idea, and as soon as I seen this, I'm like, "Oh, man, that poor girl's tied up in the basement, and she has no fucking idea that some shit's about to go down." And she is, like, at the epicenter
Yeah,
of what's about to happen.
100%. So once everyone is in position and Alex and Tony are set up in the surveillance room, they give the word to open the doors and begin sending people in, which causes the crowd to erupt in cheers. Groups of excited guests quickly rush through the doors and begin flooding the maze-like hallways of the Abaddon Hotel, and at first everything looks to be going very smooth. That is until suddenly a very worried Sarah comes rushing into Mac's hiding spot, telling him that she thinks she just saw Paul walking around out there. But this conversation is soon interrupted by Mac spotting Joey hauling ass out of the basement and towards the exit, which confuses everybody, especially considering he still has the fucking key to Melissa's handcuffs.
Yeah, that's the clown in the beginning of the movie that,
That rushes, yeah.
that I mentioned. I know you mentioned Sarah kinda blowing the illusion, and now we're getting pieced together at the end of this movie, both sets of footage as it happened, which I think is really cool how they showed that YouTube footage, some of the only footage that exists, and then at the end of the movie, the documentary is piecing together their side,
Mm-hmm.
the inside footage with the same timeline, and it's really cool how they kinda put everything together.
So, this is where things quickly begin to unravel because right after Joey runs past, they all hear a loud rumble from the basement and start to hear people screaming. And not like fun haunted house screaming, like shit is really fucking wrong screaming. There's a big difference. So Mag then instructs Sarah to run upstairs to Alex and Tony in order to find out just what the hell is going on, because now all of a sudden the walkie-talkies refuse to work. And this is where we saw in that YouTube video Sarah quickly run past those guests and up the stairs, which we know is right before everyone stampedes out of there and all hell breaks loose. We then cut to another guest's personal video that was recovered, which shows them stepping into the basement where Melissa is freaking out, begging someone to help her get free because there is now a tall, dark figure in all black slowly walking towards her that just appeared out of nowhere, which is what caused Joey to jump up and haul ass. I don't know how, but I've missed this guy over in the corner every single time I've seen this except for this week.
The tall guy in the black robe?
Yeah, over in the corner, like off
Ah.
to the side. I somehow never caught him.
Oh, no, yeah, that's a big part of it, and this is, a big thought behind Andrew Cognetti's idea of wanting to do a haunted house movie where something goes down and nobody would quite know if it's part of the show or not, and you see the confusion of the people in the basement because this totally seems like something that would be part of the haunted house. Like, she's tied up. Obviously, in the show, somebody has tied her up, and you would have which is supposed to be the clown, but he's took off. He's got scared and took off, so if you were in this scenario, you would totally think the only other thing in this room, this big black robe guy, would be the main villain of the scene.
Well, I think
And
that's what they think
yeah,
until some other stuff that I'm about to describe
yeah.
happens, which this was another thing that I actually was able to piece together really well watching this movie multiple times this week. So, of course, despite her screaming that this isn't part of the show, everyone thinks it's a part of the show. That is until they discover that the main exit door is now locked shut and a second dark figure appears and grabs Melissa by the throat. This immediately causes mass panic as the group then attempts to run out of the basement the way they came, but there are so many people in such a tight spot it creates a choke point, causing even more panic. These demonic figures then start attacking the guests, causing the camera to fall and stop recording, where we then jump back upstairs where we once again see people freaking out, trying to find an exit. Mac, while using a flashlight, is able to lead a large group of the people out of a side door, but before he can get everybody out, the door slams shut and locks them in. Mac ends up running into Tony, who is rushing to the basement to help a still screaming Melissa, but as soon as Tony runs to the doorway, the door slams shut, locking Tony in and Mac out. Mac then runs back through the hotel where he comes across Sarah, and they both head to the attic where Alex is, but right as they make it up there, they see an almost dead Alex hanging from the ceiling. And as they attempt to help him, they quickly realize that they are surrounded by these demons dressed in all black. Sarah manages to escape back down the stairway as they all attack and kill Mac, where Alex finally runs out of air and also dies as the camera fades to black. We then cut back to the interview with Sarah, where she then tells Diane that after she escaped the attic, she made it to the front door right as the cops were busting in, which is how she managed to survive the whole event. Now, as this was all going on, tons of fire trucks and police were outside, which causes Diane to ask the question, if this is how it really happened, then how did the city manage to keep it quiet for so long? But Sarah doesn't answer this question because she informs Diane that she needs to take a break. Diane, of course, agrees and even offers to rent Sarah a room at the hotel to rest in, but Sarah interrupts her, telling Diane that she already has a room, which is 2C, and to come get her in a couple of hours to finish the interview. Diane agrees, but right before Sarah leaves, she tells Diane that they should go to the Abaddon for the documentary because no one ever went back and cleaned it up after the tragedy. And this, of course, very much interests her, which I don't blame her because I'd want to see that shit too.
Yeah,
You
but
tell me that no one's fucking touched anything since then? Yeah, I need to see that.
yeah, I wanna see it too, but as a viewer, I knew as soon as Sarah said, like, "That's the only thing keeping you guys out, you should go there," that something was incredibly fucking off with Sarah.
Yeah. So Diane decides to take her cameraman to the Abaddon while the editor Mitchell stays behind and continues going through the footage that Sarah brought. But as she is heading out, she stops by the main desk and tells the hotel worker to please inform the lady in 2C that they will be back in an hour. But the hotel worker is confused because she informs her that they don't have a 2C. She then has the lady look up what room Sarah Havel is in, but after a quick search on the computer, she informs them that there is no Sarah Havel staying there. Despite this odd bit of information, Diane kind of blows this off, assuming Sarah registered under a fake name, and heads off to the hotel anyway. By the way, love the hotel worker's accent. I could listen to an Australian woman talk all day. Love it. So as Diane heads to the Abaddon, we get another black screen that tells us that the editor Mitchell stays behind to look at the footage, and what he finds while they are gone is still to this day unexplainable. And then we get to see this footage. So it immediately picks up when Sarah escapes the attic, which shows her picking up a camera down in the bar area. She then begins walking through the hotel, filming the aftermath of the attack, attempting to find a way out. But right as she arrives at the front door, she spots Paul just standing there. She then throws the camera down and runs over to him, giving him a big hug, but he doesn't really react or hug her back. And this is where she realizes that something is wrong with him, as she then lets go and begins slowly backing away. He ends up walking past her and grabbing the camera, which he then uses to beat her skull in. After many violent strikes from the device, we then get a close-up of a very bloody Sarah starting to die while laying on the floor, when suddenly a growling sound begins to appear and a still conscious Sarah is drugged down the hallway, which, remember, we've seen the pictures from that, from the guy who snuck in and literally drags her down the hallway and pulls her into this fucking wall. Evil Paul then places the camera on the floor and stands in front of it, where he then uses a piece of glass to slice his own throat. And as he begins struggling to breathe, he slides down the wall and dies right as the police burst through the door, which is what that anonymous cop was talking about. It ends up being Paul. But yeah, the twist here is Sarah totally didn't survive like we thought.
Yep.
So-
Sarah has been dead the entire time, and now we know that this documentary crew has been baited into a trap by Sarah to get them at the hotel.
Yep, definitely. So after that, we then cut to Diane and her cameraman heading inside the hotel, which conveniently left the front door unlocked for them. Big red flag, if you ask me. So as they head inside, we see that despite the time gap, the place looks pretty much the same as it did that night. And one of the first things they see is the dried blood of Sarah, which, just like the picture we saw that Martin took, leads right into that wall. And as they head through the kitchen, we spot in the dark corner of the room Mac's ghost, who stands very still as he watches them navigate their way through the debris. They then head towards the basement, where they spot Tony's dried blood at the bottom of the stairs. But despite Diane's eagerness to go down, her cameraman says fuck no, which I agree. I'm with him. I wouldn't be going down there. They then end up going through most of the other rooms in the building when suddenly Diane's phone rings. But when she looks at it, she says it's Mitchell and she will call him back once they finish up in here, which we probably assume why he's calling is to tell her about the footage he just watched of Sarah being murdered.
Yeah, big mistake.
Yep. So after that, they then head up the first flight of stairs where they eventually come to a door with the marking 2C on it, which Diane immediately recognizes. And despite her cameraman's objection to the idea, Diane opens the door, revealing Sarah sitting on the bed facing away from them. They then walk into the room asking Sarah if she is okay or needs any help, and as Sarah turns her head to face them, we see her face is bloody and broken. The sight of this shocks Diane and her cameraman, but right as they go to run away, the door slams, locking them inside. As Sarah begins to scream and bang on the door, the cameraman turns around to see not only Sarah standing there, but two large figures in all black that immediately come towards them. We then get a bunch of static and screaming until finally the camera comes back on, now sitting on the floor filming a completely empty room as a creepy piano starts to play in the background.
So the static, I never realized until I was reading through that book, the static is actually, and it's a staple throughout the whole franchise, that's the moment that the hotel takes a body. Like somebody actually dies. As soon as that static hits, that's the hotel taking a body. And that's why when it happens to Paul with the girl in the room, like although his essentially his ghost, his body is back, he's dead.
Yeah.
That's why I said when you can hear that piano playing, that was actually Paul's piano riff. It's because that's him actually, like that's his soul that the hotel now has down there playing it. Which
That's
is
really
why his
interesting.
body's not down there. He's sitting up against the wall.
So we then get a black screen showing a picture of the Hell House team standing in front of the Abaddon Hotel smiling with the caption, "To this day, the tragedy at the Abaddon Hotel remains a mystery to the public." And that is the end of Hell House LLC. Yeah, good
Good.
movie, man. Good twist. I do remember when I first watched the movie, I did not see that coming. When I rewatched it again this week, because it's been a while, I remember there was some kind of twist, but I couldn't remember what it was, so it kinda got me again. But yeah, good movie.
Yeah.
Really good movie.
Did you like it more than what you remembered? 'Cause
Oh, drastically more.
I do remember I was really interested how you were going to take watching it because I remember you not remembering the movie very well. Like, you remember you watched it, but it didn't really stand out to you too much. We had this conversation also when I bought the box set. You were kind of surprised that I had bought the limited edition box set. And kind of a similar thing happened to me is I didn't remember this movie being as awesome as it was when I went back and watched it this time, and maybe just because it was so long ago and we binge watched all 3 of them back to back, but yeah, I was, interested to see how it was going to be for you.
Yeah, so I've learned after years of doing this show that when we go to cover a movie, 9 times out of 10, it's not a movie I pick, it's a movie you pick. But when we go to do one, and I know that I haven't seen it a bunch of times and I haven't seen it in a long time, I have, come to the point where I'm like, okay, before I start watching this movie, I want to gather my thoughts and memories about this movie. And what I discovered when I did that this week was that there is a lot of things that I had this movie and a very similar other movie, which is The House That October Built, kind of mixed in together. And I was able to clearly separate them this week. And I was like, yeah, The House That October Built is like a cool premise and stuff, but it's nowhere near as good of a movie as this. And I was taking kind of some of the negative things from that movie and contributing them to this. And then I couldn't I remembered like not really liking all the characters very well. They were all kind of like douchey guys. But again, I had that confused with a different movie. So when I sat down and really watched this, I was like, man, I had this confused with some things and I had some other stuff mixed up, and I actually really liked this movie. So that's kind of how things turned around. All right, some quick facts. Some of them we already mentioned. Apparently, the YouTube video we seen in the beginning and some of the end of the film was actually shot by writer-director Stephen Cognetti himself. He
Mm.
filmed that stuff. So the main clown's outfit, the one that we've seen in all the sequels, is the same one worn by the main clown in the found footage movie Behind the Sightings, which I do remember seeing this. I've seen that movie one time. It's kind of a movie about like all those, remember there was all those weird clown sightings for like a year or two.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I unfortunately could not find out if this was on purpose or not. I
I
I
would imagine probably not.
I think it was just a coincidence, like, it was, like, a popular clown costume at the time, but, yeah, I'm not really sure if this was on purpose or just a coincidence. So, the tune played on the piano at various times in all 4 films is actually an altered, minor version of the old Meow Mix cat food jingle, which
Huh.
if you don't remember this jingle, I do. It was the meow, 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 meow,
Oh
meow,
god,
meow, meow,
yeah.
meow, 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 meow. Yeah, it's that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awful.
yep.
God, I hated that commercial.
Sounds way cooler in this movie.
Yeah.
All right, so ratings and kill count. We have a total of 20 kills, give or take a couple. So first we have Andrew Tully, who hung himself. Joey the Clown also hung himself off screen. Melissa, who was drugged into hell by demons. Tony, who was also drugged into hell. Mac, who was killed by demons. Alex, who was hung by demons. Sarah was beat badly by evil Paul and then drug into hell. Paul cut his own throat. Diane was killed by demons. Jonathan the cameraman also killed by demons. And 11 to number 20, which is at least 10 guests, were killed or drug into hell in the aftermath of everything happening. So yeah, 20. All right, so favorite kill, and you're up first.
Yeah, we don't really see many of the deaths in this movie, so I didn't spend too much time on best kill. I just went with Sarah for getting her head beat in and dragged off, and Paul as probably Paul first. Let's put Sarah and Paul as my two favorite, but probably Paul was slitting his own throat, followed by Sarah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I had the same problem where I kept moving them back and forth. So I went with Sarah. The effects looked good, they weren't bad looking, but what really put it in first place was actually the twist reveal. That's why I put it in first place. I did originally have Paul. Now, my second is Paul because his acting in the scene is like really good. Like he really seems like he's like struggling to breathe and stuff, which is you don't see that as much in a lot of like throat slit scenes. Like typically people kind of grab their throat and they can't like make noise.
Or they die immediately.
Yeah, but he's like literally
Gargling,
forcing his lungs to try to cough air like into his lungs.
which is even more horrific knowing that he slit his own throat.
Yeah, but what really adds to it for me is I don't know if this is how it was meant to be, but the way I took it was Paul, once he slices his throat, it almost like Paul comes back. And if you think back, like if you think how that would work, is Paul gets scared to death by this girl in his room, and then he, boom, it's blank. And then he immediately comes to with his throat slit. How fucking terrifying would that be?
Yeah.
That is super fucking creepy to think about how he probably experienced that death.
Yeah. So I took that as your body's reaction, trying to breathe. It's just your body's natural reaction because I considered Paul dead as like whenever the camera does the blur thing, that's the hotel like claiming from that point forward, Paul was actually dead. He was in the hotel. His body still was existing for the purposes of doing what the hotel needed it to do. But yeah, either way, really cool perspective. Just him like gargling and struggling to breathe.
All right, so what'd you rate it?
So I gave this movie a 4.7. I absolutely love it. It gets me excited for Halloween haunted houses. Stephen Cognetti killed it. It's such a simple, original found footage idea, but he executed it so perfectly. They do a great job building curiosity in the beginning, making us as an audience like immediately immersed and invested in the story by the way that they edit the beginning of the movie. Like it sets the stage for the whole movie is what the fuck goes on. Like you're anxious to see what happens at the end of this movie throughout the whole thing. I thought they did a great job doing the documentary style. The pacing was perfect. The editing and timing was fantastic. Jumping between the public videos of the incident, the documentary interviews, and the Hell House crew footage that's held over to the documentary crew. The way they jump back and forth between those three was awesome. Great job building dread. I thought the chemistry was great. The sets, the recreating the haunted house, which now I know was an actual haunted house, but way more realistic than most movies that do haunted houses. But by far the best part of this movie is the scare scenes are legitimately scary as fuck. There's a handful of scenes that are legitimately horrifying if you put yourself in the perspective of the people in the movie, which is an essential part of creating a successful found footage movie, and they pulled that off perfectly. Overall, fucking fantastic found footage Halloween movie.
I gave it a 4.3. I would definitely give it a little more if we would have got to see, like, at least a little more effects. They're really the really, like, the only like, when we were talking about the favorite kill, we had to rely on a lot of other stuff because there's almost no bloody, gore effects, and it's, 20 kills and you don't really see any of it, like, gore-wise. I would have liked to at least seen two more. So, yeah, that I penalized it for that, and then also another thing that absolutely drove me nuts, it's a little I guess I feel a little different about it now that you've said it, but they do the camera static thing, and I hated that. The a lot of found footage movies now that we've moved into, like, digital cameras, they can't do the, like, the old static effect, like the VHS, so now they do, like, the digital effect thing, and I've never seen anything do that in person, so that's why it kinda drives me nuts, like, I'm just not a fan of it. I do feel a little bit better about it since you told me, like, it's kind of more of a reason, but I'm still not a fan of that.
Yeah, they actually do that through the whole franchise.
I know, believe
Yeah.
me.
Even well, it's put there for a reason. That's why I said
I wish they'd make that somehow more clear, but yeah, I thought it was just like an effect to maybe hide edits or try to just so they didn't have to do gore, they could just do an effect right there and they wouldn't have to worry about doing the kill scene very well. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. But overall, man, I really enjoyed the movie more than I ever have before. It's fun, it's creepy. I'm so glad they got to continue what they started here. And one thing I really liked about my multiple watches this week was each time you watch it, you notice more and more creepy shit in the background that you didn't notice before.
yeah. I mean,
That is my favorite part probably about the movie.
there's even stuff that when they're going through the footage of the Hell House footage that for the documentary, they freeze that stuff in the background that the Hell House members didn't notice, that when they first show the footage, you wouldn't even realize it, and it's just, obviously, we can't add every bit of that in the plot,
Yeah.
but yeah, they do a really good job with that.
Yeah, when I watched it today, when I was finishing up the plot, when they do the scene where the dining room's all of a sudden different, it's like candlelight. Well, there's a little girl standing in the corner, which now I'm like, oh, it's the fucking missing 11-year-old girl from the 80s.
Yeah.
Totally missed that. It was the, first time, I think there was one scene where I saw Mac in the back corner in the shadow.
Yeah,
And then
you mentioned that when they go in, and, I didn't see that.
there was another time where it was like either Alex or Tony somewhere kind of tucked off in a corner watching. So yeah, I think that's probably my like favorite thing about the movie is you could probably watch it 3 or 4 times and notice different shit. But yeah, that's our feelings on Hell House, man. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials, head to the store and get you a new Grindhouse Syndicate shirt for Halloween season. Tell a friend, a family member, or your local creepy hotel owner about the show, and we hope to see you next time.